some kind of move here, maybe f4 if you want to keep control of these squares. But after queen takes, that light squared bishop that you were trying to stick black with is now gone from the board. The other idea, of course, after knight to g4 is that you could take this knight, but now it's different because suddenly there's a pawn that's kind of restricting your king, and the move e5 is not so easy to stop. You'd have to play d4, but you take away this d4 square for your knight, which you had won in the first place. Now it's not that powerful, but you also open up the possibility of bishop to b5, and suddenly black's okay. Did Jacobian maybe miss this line when he walked into it? Thought, I'm going to just play knight e5, knight d4, everything's going to work. And then on seeing the move, said, wait a second, I can't do it. And had to opt for rook c1. Maybe that's what happened and caused him now to just have, instead of what looked like a really pleasant advantage, just a little bit to work with. Guys?
Very good.
And we do have a couple more moves. b6 was played, followed by knight to e5 by Varuzhin Jacobian. Will this be enough for Varuzhin to have a realistic chance of victory in this game? Gadakenski's made his last few moves rather quickly. We criticized him for getting really low on time, but he's made his last 6 moves in just 5 minutes or so. So
He's
kind of removing that trouble a little bit.
picking up the pace.
Picking up the pace, exactly, and Varuzhin kind of lagging a little bit. And yeah, we'll have to keep a close eye on this critical battle for the U.S. Championship. We'll be right back after a commercial break. Hello and welcome back to the 2014 U.S. Chess Championship. We just got an exciting development in the Molnar-Lenderman game, so let's go right to that. Speaking of time pressure, Molnar's got only 25 minutes to Lenderman's 56 minutes, so that could become a factor later in the game.
Well, we've seen it consistently in the play of Alex Lenderman that he has out-prepared his opponent, and not only the position on the board, but also on the clock has been very favorable for Alex Lenderman. We're going to go step back 1-2 moves. With the move Queen D5, Alex was proposing a queen trade, worried about the open D file and the potential that his bishop on D3 might be a tactical target. Max stepped back with his bishop, and now we see the aggressive central thrust E6, E5, hoping to try to force white into trading queens. And after, say, knight F5, let me just put a lot of swaps on the board. Something of this nature, we could see the rook, black rook, coming down to the second rank, really aggravating white's pawns on F2 and B2.
And getting, even though we're dropping the E pawn,
After
you would
rook
be
takes
getting
E5.
Rook takes B2 followed by bishop F6. Bishop F6 followed by
Exactly.
rook B2.
Exactly. We picked that up, and black would definitely be for choice. I believe that
So instead, Mac played the move bishop to B3.
B3.
And then Alex quickly played queen to D7, so he had his response prepared for this.
Exactly. So bishop B3, hoping that after queen takes F3, knight takes F3, the pawn on E5 is weak, and after, for example, E4, suddenly it's white's pieces that are coordinating attack against the F7 pawn. Definitely, Lenderman wanted nothing to do with that. He dropped back with his queen. Queen came back to D7, stopping the move knight F5. If white is forced to retreat his knight, for example, to either the squares E2 or C2, then, let me just put one move.
And that did happen.
Then a move like queen G4, or maybe even queen
H3.
F5 or queen H3, and we see Lenderman taking advantage of that move H2, H4, which didn't feel very good to me. Which move did he do? Did he
After
retreat?
knight C2, now Lenderman is
Knight-
on move.
Okay, so queen D7, knights. Oop, I beg your pardon. Queen D7, knight to C2 was played, and now we have to move our queen, first of all, because we want to develop the bishop on C8. But more importantly, white is threatening this move bishop to B6 with a double attack against the pawn on E5, as well as the rook on D8. So black has got to do something. I thought queen G4 was it. Queen takes G4, knight takes G4. Some position like this.
And you still have the possibility of rook to D2, but then after...
But in this case, then I can just play rook to D1, right? And you're not in time.
And now actually Lenderman has played a move. He played queen to C7 instead of
Okay.
playing queen G4 or
Okay.
H3 or F5 as we thought he might. So keeping queens on the board,
I think that was actually the best move because, first of all,
it stops bishop B6.
which is a very important threat, it covers the pawn on E5.
And now the bishop on C8 is ready to jump to G4 or H3 or the knight on G4. And as we mentioned before, that pawn on H4 creating that weakness on G4, which is
On the
now
king side.
coming into the play,
Exactly.
especially with the queen on F3.
Exactly.
So if white tries to highlight the B6 square, perhaps by playing A4 and A5.
Well, first of all, you can be stopped, but second of all, the bishop
gaining these
G4
tempos
is
and forcing us to fianchetto our queen.
Yeah, putting the queen on
Never
G2.
pretty.
Yeah, I'm just
Better than H1.
through that. Just starting to consider ideas to try to cement, while you're trying to cement your bishop on B6, I might start trying to cement my bishop on F3. And I think the threats that are closer to the white king are more serious than what's happening on the queen side.
I mean, A4 does look a little slow, to be honest.
Yeah, of course.
I just...
Just as an idea to throw out what
And
white
rook
might.
D1 is not completely out of the question because while you have the move bishop G4, we can interpolate the move rook takes D8 check, although now we've given up the D file.
Right, very helpful series of moves for
Right.
black.
Yeah,
If-
so white doesn't, so it kind of makes you wonder, what can white do that's active here?
Exactly.
Maybe just anticipate the G4 square and move the queen preemptively.
Okay, if we move our queen, great. So we move our queen, the bishop actually just develops either to G4 or F5.
Black's activity is very
Looking
desirable.
great. Very nice, very
so
nice.
nice position for Alex Enderman and a nice time on the clock. And we've got another game that's heating up, Ramirez-Robson, and Maurice has more on that.
Well, it looks as though in this position, Ramirez has just gifted a pawn to his opponent. Robson sitting in a good position at 4.5 points, needing a win. If he could do it with the black pieces, so much the better going into the next round. There's some scenarios, very percentage-wise low scenarios, that have him being able to tie for first in the championship, but he still would have to start by winning this game and winning the next one as well. But take a look at this position. Here, the sacrifice on B4 was played, giving Ramirez an extra, a down a pawn, but extra lines in the position. His bishop is really quite good, and he could go after this knight after he dropped his knight back with the knight C2. His intention is certainly to get pressure on this side, but after D5, his chances didn't look that great of getting any advantage, and he can play for trades on the D5 square to be able to pick off this pawn on B7. He spent a long time here. He's now at 26 minutes and 29 seconds, and he played the very strange knight to A4. Maybe a little too deep for himself. Robson captured on C4, now up 2 pawns he is, and in this position, knight to C5, attacking the bishop. The problem with this line is there's a very simple bishop to D5, and that defends everything. If you try to grab this piece on B7, of course, this is kind of a knight committing suicide by going into the position and not being able to come back out. And any other moves seem dangerous. Bishop takes D5, of course, is not a move to consider, because after queen takes D5, your knight's again under attack, and it's not going anywhere. You're down 2 pawns. And another line to think about would probably be this capture, taking on C4, winning back one of the pawns. But now after bishop takes on G2, knight takes on G2, then a simple queen C7. And you really got to wonder, what is Ramirez thinking about? Why did he go down into this line? You know he didn't want to equalize maybe, but this looks like he's just donating a pawn with no compensation whatsoever to black. All Robson has to do is find these moves. I'd like to make one last point. If you look at Lenderman's games, the way he's been playing in this championship, even when he's losing, he's not going low on time. His time management has been superb. We're watching a lot of other players go down below 20 minutes, 10 minutes, even down to the minute increment. We've seen Irina Krush go down to 2 seconds, even 1 second on her clock. But Lenderman has been moving quickly, confidently, out-preparing his opponents. Even when he hasn't done so, he's a believer in good clock management as part of the game, and it looks as though he's definitely equalized and is thinking about taking over the initiative in Molnar, and once again, he's got an advantage on the clock. Guys?
Nice insight. Thank you, Maurice. I'm looking at the game between the other game of our co-leader between Kobe and defending champion Gada Kamsky.
Queen trade alert.
Queen trade
Not
alert.
quite as exciting as our blunder sacrifice alerts.
No, exactly. And the game has definitely become boring on the one hand, but true happiness for Kobian, because he's reached, I believe, queen trades have been played. Let me make certain of that.
But how
Indeed.
hard do you think he's going to play? How close do you think he's going to get to the win in this game against this solid Gada Kamsky? Do you think he has a realistic chance?
I don't even think that Kobian is thinking in that manner. I think the way he's really, his approach to the game is, I would love to win. I would really, really, really love to win, but I just definitely don't want to lose, because I really got a chance to play for the national championship in the final round, even if I can't win this game.
Yes,
And
it's true. He's with black, and if this game ends in the way that I think it's going to, it won't take him that much more energy, and then he'll have a day to, more of a day, an evening to prepare for Ramirez. So definitely, from that point of view, he's still very much in the championship, but.
Right.
I mean, how do you realistically rate his chances to win this game against Kamsky?
Yeah,
I see you're saying we have the better minor pieces, but what about targets?
Yeah, well, it's not really about Kamsky. It's really about the position. There are several. Actually, there's a lot of levers in the position. The first one is that White could try to play King f2, h3, g4, get a favorable situation on the queen side, on the king side.
The king side, yeah.
The other idea that if I were white, I would really be going for this b2, b4 idea. So I just put some moves on the board and try to show you where I'm thinking the game might be heading. I put my king on d2. I want to go king c3 followed by b4, make some trades so that my king will eventually be able to make inroads all the way to b6. Everything gets traded off on the queen side. I've got this very active king on b6 versus a passive light squared bishop. The chances of winning go really, really, really high if white can get an active king. So it's all about white's king. Can it make a breakthrough? If it can, it's a win. It's a win.
Irina Krush's game yesterday. So this is where when she started getting her king in, it was just
Precisely.
all over.
Right, exactly.
And even she was up a pawn as well, but if Anna had adroitly kept her rook from cutting off the king, would have been very tough for Irina indeed. So you're saying that if you can get your king to c3 and your b4 move in,
Right.
and be able to take with the king, because of course there might be some variations where I get to put my king on c5, and then you taking with the pawn isn't leading to that type of infiltration that you want.
Right. I'll always be able to play knight b3. The other thing...
Or knight takes e6 check.
Right. Well, the other thing is that I do have another way of activating my king, and that way is actually right through the center. So, for example, in this position, although it's camouflage, my king could actually go to d4 to e5 and win the game like this.
Now, how about if I try to trade knights on d7 at the right moment?
Precisely. Like you can. That's exactly the situation that I wanted to show. Now with this retreat knight to d4 to f3, you see suddenly it's like an open fairway on a green.
I thought you said a fairy. I thought you were going to say a fairy tale because
No.
having that king on d4 and that knight in e5.
Right. So like the king comes to d4. Maybe the king really wants to come to e5.
But we could put our king on d6.
Yeah, sure, king to d6. But these are all kinds of temporary things from Black's point of view. This position I would rate as really close to a win.
I'm sure
the computer wouldn't even consider that white has any serious advantage. But this one I'd rate really, really close to a
Because
win.
Black's pretty much paralyzed. So
His bishop is dead. The knight could jump to g5 and to create some more weaknesses over here on Black's king side. And the ideal position, of course, would be to have something like this. I'll just put the ideal position for white on the board just to give it kind of a sense of positional overkill for a moment.
You're having a lot of fun with this game.
Exactly. And I mean, this is like, dominating king, dominating knight, very bad bishop.
So what if we try to play b5 ourselves? I guess it's hard to kind of work it in. I would try to even...
Somewhere around these parts,
I
perhaps?
was trying to figure out a way to play b5 so that if you play b4, even though it's positionally really ugly.
You mean some situation like that? B5 is really a move that you really don't want to play. You put you put a pawn on the same color as your light
I was
squared
going to try to
bishop.
put my bishop on d7 instead, so it wouldn't be like quite as ugly. But the problem is it's hard to put your bishop on d7 and play for b5 because then there's always going to be knight takes d7 and b5.
These types of things. So this is the kind of thing that I was saying that white is aspiring to. Probably he could also throw in an h2, h3. Maurice a moment ago.
Well, white actually did play h3 in the game. And this is move 24 of the game, so they're still far away from time control, but of course, this position, neither of them are likely to eat up all of their time. And we've got Maurice with some thoughts on this battle, which is going to be very crucial for our U.S. championship.
Indeed, Jen, it looks as though Akobian is definitely taking the safety-first approach. Yesterday, he lost a big game, and in his opinion, a bad game against Sam Shanklin, where he just got blistered. I mean, the way he was beaten yesterday left him in a great degree of shock. You could see it in his face after the game. After having had such a smooth path to first place, to get beaten like that really must have hurt. Deciding today, play solid against Kamsky, you know what kind of sleeping giant you might awaken if you play incorrectly. It looks as though there is a possibility of there being a six-way tie for first. Not with this position we see on the board now, though, but there is a scenario that we have calculated that shows that there's a possible six-way tie for first first of all, the head of the pack. You see, Akobian and Linderman, they would both have to lose today. Both seemingly unlikely results. They would have to lose today, one versus Kamsky and Linderman versus Molnar, in order for this scenario to go, and then draw each other tomorrow. They're playing each other in the last round, so that's going to be a big game. Kamsky would have to win today and lose to Friedel, who is currently tied with him, but he would have to lose against Shanklin and beat Kamsky for those players all to be at 6.5. Are you still following me, folks? That would all have to fall into place in order to get us with those 4 players at 6.5. But then you'd have the Shanklin factor. He's already defeated 2 of the top players. That is Linderman and Akobian, and he would simply have to win his next 2 games against Friedel and against Gareev, and then he would go to 6.5 as well. And the rest at the tail end, well, these are the Hail Marys, guys, because their chances of doing this are very tricky. They would all have to win. Of course, they can't all win because they're playing each other. As you see in round 11, Onishchuk is going to play Robson, and Naroditsky right now is playing Onishchuk. So only one of these could emerge and get to 6.5. In fact, in any scenario, these 3 players, only one of them will get to 6.5. So we do have that kind of mathematical possibility, but the way Akobian is playing this position now, that math is about to go out the window, or at least is looking that way, because if Akobian wins and if Akobian draws today and gets to 6.5, even if Linderman managed to lose, one of them is going to have 7 points tomorrow, because Akobian would have 6.5 playing someone with 6, and any result will result in someone at least having 7 points and likely locking up the championships. Guys?
That's right. This game is never going to be a loss for Varuzhin.
No, I don't see that in any scenario.
Katakimsky did play knight to d7 going for this trade. So what do you think his concept is against your idea of switching the knight and then putting the king on d4 and the knight on e5?
Well, exactly. In this position, I'm
he
still
gonna try
kind of
to-
double guessing the h3. So basically what Kamsky is thinking is that if he gets into this, good knight, bad bishop type of situation.
Is there time for black to play b5 and b4 here? No, then just white plays b4 and then locks that down, and then the position's even more positionally bad.
Well, yes, but I was thinking that another
get king
scenario
c5 in somehow?
is just to play d5, d4. Okay, if I could get something like, okay, so I'm not really too sure exactly how I should.
You first want to move your bishop out of capture?
I definitely don't want to allow White's king just to come right around the horn and put the pawn on d4. So let's say I could play d4 takes, and here
Bishop b5 or
yeah,
then,
let's say bishop
there is
b5.
knight c4 in the position.
Yeah, and then just come up with the king. So the idea of activating and doubling these pawns as a defensive effort, because I do see the good knight versus bad bishop ending as losing. I don't see really good chances for Gada of creating any fortress, and Gada is not looking happy. He put his hand in his head.
Can we do this in a slower way, though, instead
Sure.
of going for knight c6 check, and we could try to keep more control. Like instead of playing knight c6 check immediately, we could take on d7 and then
Sure.
try to bring our king over to c3, or play knight to f3, kind of holding on to both squares.
Well, exactly, and I'm kind of double guessing this move h3 once again. So knight e5 here, so it's just a direct transposition, right? I mean, it's just the same position we had a second ago. So if we
No,
want,
but I don't have to play knight e5. I'm saying. Because
Okay.
in the other position, my knight was on c6 and it was attacked.
Right,
Whereas here,
right.
maybe I can try to move my king around to c3 first.
okay, sure,
So that I keep control over your sacrificial ideas.
fair
So maybe you
enough.
have some other tactical ideas here.
Well, tactics,
Just
no,
bishop
but-
h5.
yeah,
Tactic-
just strategic ideas, but no. Again,
So now with king d2, you're going to play bishop h5 and d4 anyway. But maybe I could have stopped it with g4. Anyway, much to discuss here. We've got our Grandmaster Ben Feingold, who's giving commentary right next door at Lester's. He's a St. Louis local and a popular host on the St. Louis Chess Club YouTube channel. So we'll check in with him about what's going on in the games.
all right.
Thanks, Jen. I'm with Grandmaster Ben Feingold, giving commentary over at Leicester's. Ben, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Marie. It's great to be here.
Ben, anything so far that has surprised you in this round? You're doing commentary with Grandmaster Robert Hess, I should mention, as well.
Right, Robert and I are doing commentary. Occasionally, some of the players in the audience are stronger than us, so we get a little help sometimes. Basically, I've been disgusted today. And I think, like you and Jennifer and Yasser really have it right when you retired from playing competitive chess, because some of these guys got to retire. I mean, I think yesterday, Onishuk, after playing Queen D5 check, should have stopped the clock and retired. And I think Kamsky should have retired after Rook C4 yesterday, and now look at the way they play. Yeah, the young guys are taking over. I think today's really showing it. Kamsky and Onishuk are finished. And I mean, I would be totally shocked if Kamsky ties for first this tournament. And this just isn't his tournament. He's not the Kamsky he used to be. And a lot of the games today aren't going the way that I expected. We could start with the Kamsky game.
Sure.
Playing the opening just very timid, very slow, playing a line that's not very good and getting this worse position. And then VAR trading all the pieces off to make sure he has 0 losing chances, but I think he minimized his winning chances somewhat.
Indeed.
I thought he had a huge advantage and was really going to put pressure on Gata with the huge time advantage he has, but VAR hates to lose so much. I think he's afraid of Kamsky. He's just making sure he doesn't lose.
Do you think that the game yesterday might have really hurt his feelings and like really not wanted to come today and challenge Kamsky?
Really, VAR was playing great. Those 4 wins in a row weren't just wins. He was playing really well. And when he had some suspicious positions, he was defending really well. Yesterday just got crushed. I mean, and you were talking about it. I mean, he really got crushed yesterday. And a nice game from Shankland, unlike today where Shankland's playing his usual terrible self. We'll get to that later. Yeah, Kamsky here.
Don't hold back on your opinions, by the way.
No, I'm really upset today about the play. And usually, when the women have a rest day, the men are really fighting and playing a little suspicious, and we see few draws and lots of active play. So that's good for the fans. We don't have all the games to see today, but this game here, Kamsky playing really passively, Akobian with a big advantage. Gary said it on the air. White had a great position, and I think Gata's going to hold this. I don't think there's enough pieces left on the board. But I wouldn't want to be black here, just too passive.
Indeed.
And he has to win, too. So to play so passively when he has to win is very strange.
Very surprising. Maybe the variation of the Dutch that was thrown at him, he didn't suspect.
It seemed like on move 3 or 4, he was already thinking a long time when he knew he was going to play the Dutch. So, and by the way, Akobian did play this way, although it wasn't a blitz game, against a very strong player. He played knight c3 and bishop f4, and he won that game. So he's done this before, Akobian.
So shouldn't have been surprised that is.
No, I think he was more surprised than he should have been. He's probably expecting a main line after knight c3. He's like, what? So good prep by Akobian. Good position, more time.
Well, what about Linderman? I mean, Linderman doesn't seem to be doing so badly in this game.
Now, Linderman's my pick to win the tournament, and here's why. After losing both games, I thought he's finished. I thought black against Onishuk, and it's all over. Beat Onishuk, beat Naroditsky, nice game. Here he's black, and he's obviously trying to win. He's not like, oh, let's play equal and try to draw Kamsky style. He's trying to win the tournament. And I like the way he's playing. He's got a pretty easy pairing in Molnar, considering he's not playing top player. Molnar not having a good tournament. Molnar's a good player, but Lenderman's trying to win, and he's making the game unclear. This game could go either way. And I think this is a complicated game. I think Lenderman's going to win. I think Lenderman's going to win this tournament.
He's playing really well and got a lot of energy as a young guy. Somehow my finger doesn't want to work today. Let's go to another game that's important in the standings. Friedel Shanklin. Friedel has found himself back in contention. Surprisingly, he's the lowest rated player in the tournament.
No, and Friedel played great in the beginning and lost in the first round to Lenderman from a good position, totally winning against Naroditsky, and then ended up drawing. And just playing well throughout the tournament, +1, +2. And here he's better in this game. Now what happened was, black was fine, and then Shanklin decided to play the worst move he could find, A5. Okay, a terrible move, stopping him from playing queen A5, losing a lot of tempi, weakening his position, and now I like white. This E takes F3, a decision to try to win, not play a boring draw position, but make it more double-edged. Friedel's trying to win too. I wouldn't be surprised if Friedel wins this tournament, because he's actually trying to win. The guys who are trying to win, the younger players who aren't playing for a draw, not playing solid, those are the guys I'm rooting for. So I really hope Josh wins this game because he's trying to win.
Well, you're like me, and I know like playing for a draw at any cost. You got to play chess. Ramirez Robson, though, what's up with this? This is like crazy sacrifice. Is he just down a pawn for no reason?
Well, there's a good reason. He's getting outplayed. No, actually.
But he
no,
sacrificed the pawn in the opening, a typical
he did
sacrifice.
sacrifice it intentionally. Now, I had dinner last night with Ray, went to one of my favorite Thai restaurants, and I said, look, Ray, you got to stop doing this. 1 minute, 10 seconds, 5 seconds.
Time pressure
He says,
addict.
don't do that the rest of the tournament. Just play fast. And then I explained to him, Lenderman's playing fast. Lenderman has more points than you. So play quickly, stop this time trouble nonsense. And my son was dealing with a Spencer. He's like, I never agree with my dad, but I got to agree with him here. You got to speed up, Ray. And this game, Ray's played very quickly. He's playing really well. He's basically a pawn up for nothing, and we expect him to win. I don't know about this sacrifice on the queen side once you've played h4. I'm not sure you play on both sides of the board like that, make weaknesses everywhere. And Ray is playing quickly. Now, the computer obviously likes Black's game. Black's a pawn up, but I like the time. Ray has more time now. Ray has a lot more time, and Ray just moved. Look at this time situation. Ray's ahead,
Ray's
and
ahead.
Ray's made a
That's
move
rare.
while I'm sitting here. I can't believe it.
That's
right.
pretty rare we've seen in the championship.
No,
It's
Ray's
always
playing
down to
quickly,
10.
and Ray's playing really well this game. So I expect Black to win. Pawn sacrifice was okay. Knight e1 I didn't like. That was too passive. d5 was a good move. Ray's playing incisively. He's playing quickly. I think Ray's going to win this game.
Indeed. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Grandmaster Ben Feingold, with lots of insights and a couple of mild opinions, guys, about the championships. Back to you.
Needed Ben Feingold. Ben is so easygoing. He doesn't really come out and say, these guys are playing like idiots. They're jerks. It
It was like you the other day.
I know. and
Discuss
It's
the Thai,
nice.
It was that hot Thai food.
Go,
perhaps.
go, go. Those hot red peppers will do it every time.
So
but he's
Ben
right.
is taking Josh and Lenderman versus the rest of the field.
He is right in his angst that why, when the national championship is so close, why aren't you playing guns blazing? And got us seizing the defensive early and just, trying to make a draw? Ooh, I don't like that. I think that Ben has underestimated Akobian's winning chances in this position. I think if he just does play this move, knight takes d7, bishop takes d7, as we've been seeing, maneuver his knight to the e5 squared, go for this king walk to the d4 square, his chances of winning are really very, very good.
And now you were trying the line with bishop e8 just to unsettle things a bit.
Yeah, and that's kind of a leap to nowhere, but because White does have this move g4, as you mentioned, as we were just about when we switched to Ben. But look at the position. It's
And you're not
all
getting
in White's.
you really wanted to get your little tricky in with d4 and try to get me to capture the pawn, but here it's not quite happening because I'm just going to move my king to c3 before you do that.
Precisely.
And if you ever play b5 to try to play b4, then White plays b4.
That's right. Again,
And makes the king coming to d4 even more treacherous because now it's also hitting the c5 square.
Precisely.
Oh, very interesting.
You put your pawn on b5, you kill your light squared bishop. There's no bishop a4 all the way down to d1, and who knows where else you might go.
It's amazing how quickly you intuited White's massive chances here. It takes a lot of us a little longer to see how devastating it might be, and we'll see.
Experience does matter, and I do say that the youth, the next generations come and so forth and so on. And it seems to me like Lenderman has really basically said, hey, I'm the guy of the future here, pay attention to me. And his game, Ben was saying that he felt that the game between Lenderman and Matt could go either way. I don't see that. I really see it as going Lenderman's way, just because this move h4 just feels h4 and g3
And he might have
feels
to make further
miscast.
weaknesses because he's got his queen and the rook lined up in that diagonal.
Right.
So we definitely like Lenderman, and we're going to take a big look at that when we come back from break, and we have another Fisher puzzle for you to solve, so don't go anywhere. You never know who may show up in the U.S. Chess Championship. We'll be back with more from the 2014 event. Hello, welcome back to the 2014 U.S. Championships and U.S. Women's Championships here in St. Louis, the capital of chess in America. How many of you guys correctly guessed the move, queen to b7? Or guess, I guess, is the wrong word, right? How many of you correctly solved or found? Maurice Ashley explains why.
Yes, Jen, this is a little bit of a trick question, right? Because I'm sure everybody said, well, what's wrong with queen a3 or queen b4? I'm just winning. But Fischer didn't just like to win, he liked to stomp, okay? So in this position, he did not play one of those checks. He started with a move that looks a little dangerous, as a matter of fact, to move queen to b7, allowing g takes h3, a disco check on his king, but he had the very simple bishop to g3. Now, this kind of move, you think, well, you're also freezing your bishop. Why would you take that out of the game? What he realized was that this rook was simply trapped, where to put it. Geller chose d8. Just want to show you what happens if he had put it on e8 instead. Well, then it's a simple trade, and then it's all about the rook and queen, and even this bishop entering the party. If the king goes over, then simply queen to c7 would be mate, thanks to that bishop. And of course, if the king goes into f8, then simply any mate on the back row will just pick one, all right? So in this position, Geller, after seeing bishop to g3, played the move rook to d8, and now Fischer came back with the move queen to b4 check. And this time it's much more powerful. Move knight e7 just leads to queen takes knight, and not only are you winning that knight, but you're also picking up a rook in the process and trading off queens, I might add, because if you go here, you can't go back in the corner because of rook down with mate, so it's all she wrote. Geller decided to resign. So queen b7, you see a good move, look for a better one. I think Emmanuel Lasker said that. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Maurice.
And as did Michael Tall.
Kudos to those of you who found that. And we had some news going on in Josh Friedell's game.
All right.
Maurice and I were talking about over the break that Josh seems to be in pretty good shape. The idea was to play the move combination of h4 and queen to h6, and it was very difficult for black to defend all of the weaknesses in the position. For instance, the b5 pawn is under fire, and we're going to follow it up with h5. Not so easy for you to bring your queen to the defense because the b5 pawn is also hanging. So there's a number of weaknesses here. b5, g6, and that rook on d8 can't move forward to bolster g6 because of rook e8 mating.
Right. I'm just, I do like Josh's attacking potential on the king side. Knight goes back to c5, trying to break the blockade.
There's some possibilities of bishop takes b5 here that could come into play as well, with the idea of f6. In this particular position, knight e6 fails to rook takes e6.
And you've got the ready-to-go checkmate. But
after
the
bishop
problem,
takes b5, you're not forced to capture. You can just keep going. Yeah.
Right. I get counterplay with this move, but it's still looking like good attacking potential here for White. White could continue with keep going with probably h5 immediately. I like Walter Brown's immediately. h5 immediately. d2 counterplay for sure. I have to stop this pawn for the moment, but now this pawn is hanging. Still a lot of threats.
Well, now the bishop's not taboo anymore, though, because knight e6 is not covered.
Oh, you can take.
Maybe.
Well, I may be setting up for a different type of checkmate in this case.
And if I retake, you're going to snag my rook on d8 with a check. Well, not necessarily, because you've got the f8 square here, right?
But definitely White for choice in this game.
Yeah, but now we only got our queen, and we won more than our per.
Well, let's just see.
Because the championship might hang in the balance between a win and a draw, so.
And so knight b3 has been played. I thought we saw some other moves from the webcam there for a moment. Queen h6 is not White's only other choice. Another choice, Jen, I kind of like posting up with the queen on g5 as well, just to keep that rook under guard for a moment. If I don't put my bishop on pre, if I just step back with my bishop and keep pounding on this g6 against this g6 pawn, I don't think the d2 pawn is running any further. I've got my rook and my queen ready to go. And this bishop actually might sneak out on this diagonal against black's king. So definitely Sam Shankland under a lot of pressure in this key game for our tournament standings as well.
That's right, because if Josh Friedel is to win this game, he's going to leap to 6.5 points. Of course, black
Right.
against Gadakamsky, no easy order, but I mean,
Hey, opportunity knocks. I
Yeah.
mean, he may pull off one of the greatest successes of his chess career.
That's right,
So
and-
go Josh. And speaking of Gadakamsky, by the way, I really didn't like the way he played the position. Shocking. Akobian, as we've been witnessing throughout this whole game, has been playing it ultra safety, and to continue playing ultra safety would have meant trading knights. Surprisingly enough, Akobian said, no, I'll allow knights to stay on the board and not just play a pure ending versus a bad bishop. Was this a wise decision by him? We will find out. But I do like, once again, this rather straightforward idea of bringing white's king into an active, aggressive position, and Gada still is going to have a real hard time, in my opinion, saving this game. It's a tough position for him.
Well, with this last move, knight c5, he has some chances to get counterplay, perhaps with the knight b3 and d4 idea that you were talking about earlier,
Right.
or a knight a4 at the right moment. So
Maybe something like king e1, just so that in case of a knight a4, b3, I'm not allowing you to move the knight with a check against my king. So if your knight comes in, it may be a suicide mission. This knight may not get out from white's camp, for example, after knight d4, followed by, well, do I want to, yeah, maybe I do want to play a4 and king d2. This knight could find itself stranded on c3. So not a pleasant situation
that's
at all.
right. And your idea from before doesn't work as well here, because if instead of knight a4 you play knight b3 with the idea of this sacrifice on d4, well, now there's also a knight c6 check in the position, so I think you're a little bit too late. For instance, just king d1 now. And
Right.
can't do d4 now because of knight c6 check.
With a
And-
nice fork and picking up a pawn for free.
And if you wait for a move and try to play king d6 to get out of that check, well,
Then king c2
Then king
is
C2
too
and-
fast.
yeah, and you're-
You're giving the knight the boot.
well, I mean, I suppose there's a4, but
And that's the thing
we
that you...
are putting a pawn on a light square. Which,
Right, you're making it a very
Yeah.
nice target over here on the queen side, and it's clearly visible that with moves like knight d4 and king b4, white's all over the position here.
So we can expect Gada to find the best defenses in this game.
Yes, he's exceptional with his back to the wall. He really does find the resources, but I got to tell you, this is not a pleasant position for our defending champion.
Indeed, no. And in our most exciting game of the round today, for both the standings and perhaps the explosive possibilities, we've got Mackenzie Moner against Alexander Lenderman.
Oh my!
And Maurice has more in that game.
Indeed, Jen, we have been waiting to see this game sharpen up, and usually that happens when pawns are offered on exchange because lines open, pieces get more active, possibilities begin to percolate in those kind of situations. We see it's happened here. In this position, after this rook trade, you had a situation where you felt like nothing much was going on necessarily. The only open file is the D line. You might have suspected a move like rook d8, like in the other games, but Lenderman said, I'm not interested in playing chess like that. I have a 4-3 majority on this side, that is 4 pawns to 3. That's his side of the board, so no reason to compete for the D file. Let me play the move rook to e8 to start. Let me deal with chess on this side of the board and try to dominate here. His opponent played the move knight to e1, and now he played the very interesting b5, preventing any queen trade with queen to c4. That was in the position, so clearly Lenderman is trying to keep the game alive with interesting possibilities. He doesn't want to see any end games. He wants to see if he can win in the middle game somehow, or at least milk as many possibilities from the middle game before jumping into an advantageous ending. Well, his opponent decided, well, let me see if I can take advantage of that last move, c4. And instead, in this position, we see the move e4 was played. Now, let me say, and then maybe I'm wrong, let's go back to this position here. This was the game, guys. c4 was played, e4. The computer suggested an amazing possibility here. The move bishop to g4, which looks like it's easily answered by this move, f3. But now the move e4. Bizarre computer idea, the point being after takes, then the move queen takes with check. Now your queen can't block because the bishop is hanging, and if the knight were to block, then knight takes on g4, and suddenly there are all these terrific threats on the bishop, and here on h2, possible mating ideas. It looks as though Linderman might have missed a win in this moment. The move c4 could have been met by bishop to g4, f3 looks, of course, knight f3 is met by e4, f3 looks logical, and then suddenly this move, e4, attacking this pawn again, getting this pressure on this diagonal, exploiting the weak king. So guys, it seems as though Linderman did miss a win. We can analyze this a little bit more. The move king h1 is also met by knight takes g4, and there's monster threats on this bishop. This pawn is hanging with check. Linderman missed a win. Now that move, I have to say, the move bishop g4, e4, came out of the blue. I absolutely didn't see the idea. Of course, these computers are so beastly. It's not an easy move to spot, Yaz, but Linderman missed his chance to coast almost in these U.S. Championships. 7 points would be huge for him going into the last round. He's still working hard on his position, but he did miss what seems to have been a winning line. Guys?
Yeah, well, that's pretty interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if it did strike his fancy, and then he wasn't totally sure about the complications. Bishop
Right.
g4, f3, e4. Perhaps is it possible that he missed maybe what the variation after bishop to f4? It seems that maybe there's like a takes on f3 there.
Right. Well, for sure, the queen on c7, standing in wait for that opportunity of ambushing, snagging a pawn on g3. So after b5, c4, for sure, this move, bishop g4, f3, e4, was not missed by Linderman. He probably had a mistaken judgment that maybe after bishop f4,
So now instead of,
something like just take a pawn.
I think just takes on f3. I think this in-between move seems pretty strong because now
Attacking the
after,
queen.
yeah, bishop takes c7, you have pawn takes e2, picking, and you end up a pawn.
Precisely, knight takes f3, but this is just fantastic for black. I mean, white's king is weak, bishop c5, check is probably just winning. So I'm with Marisa 100%. I see the position after e4, e5, e4 in conjunction with bishop g4 as simply snap, crackle, pop. That's game over.
Wow, very...
But let's see what has happened.
So instead he played e4, obviously threatening bishop to g4.
Oops, I got the wrong position. I beg your pardon.
He played
Guys,
e4,
by the way,
threatening
that might have
bishop.
been a function of playing quickly. Remember, he tries to play practically and quickly. So he might not even looked very deeply. Molnar has only 8 minutes left on the clock. So he's probably thinking, let me just keep playing fast, forget about concrete variations. And that might have cost him right now. The move c4 probably didn't look that bad to him, so he just played a nice positional move. But he should have found the tactics or looked at the tactics in that position. He's simply unaware probably that he missed that variation.
I don't know, it seems so
It's
up the alley of the position, and I kind of agree with Yaz that maybe he hallucinated bishop f4 takes on f3 or something.
Something, because that is, it has a logical flow. Having said that,
We'll
I
find
mean,
out.
Lenderman is
The
basically
position still
saying
looks pretty hot.
it really does. I mean, with my move e4, I'm setting up for the skewer against the rook. Mac moved his queen out of that skewer, and b5, b4 came, basically saying, hey, look, your pieces are a little bit silly over here on the queen side. c4, c5, and Linderman said, well, the only thing defending that pawn, your queen and bishop, let me eliminate the bishop on e3. Let me go for knight takes e3, followed by bishop takes c5, and I'll be winning anyway. So maybe in Lenderman's mind, he thinks he's just simply cruising, and life is good and getting better and better. So maybe he thought that this was a win without any complications, whereas somehow in the line with e4 there were some complications, which Maurice has shown the complications aren't there. Black is just stone cold winning.
But he might have thought there were a few. Yeah, wow. So this is looking really lovely for Lenderman. Now let's take a look over at the U.S. Women's Chess Championship. Of course, it is a rest day, so you just see empty boards here in the U.S. Women's Chess Championship Hall. And tomorrow we are going to see some key matchups, though, in their final round. Both tournaments conclude tomorrow, of course, unless there is a playoff. Irina Krush and Agnes Satansky both tied at the top after Irina beat her yesterday for that crucial chance to catch up to her main rival. And tomorrow, Irina is actually going to be playing against Victoria Nie with the black pieces. And Satansky is going to be playing against Nemkova with the white pieces. So Satansky playing the player with the better score, but with white. Krush playing Nie, who's lost a lot of opportunities, but seems to be playing pretty solidly in a lot of games. So I think that there's definitely a chance that both of them win, and we'll see another historic and thrilling Krush-Satansky playoff. Stay tuned, guys, for that.
Absolutely. And again, I just brought up the game between Shanklin and Josh. And let's just go back a few moves, because it appears, to my eyes at least, that after the move Queen F4, Sam was really worried about what was happening over here against his king on the king side. He played the defensive move Queen F6, and Josh went Queen C7, which is really nice move. I like this move very much, both offense and defense. Not only is the queen posting up nicely on the 7th rank, but it's basically containing Black's knight. So
The
there's
only
no
active idea.
Exactly. So there's no knight C5 breaking the blockade, and Josh is looking really good, and Sam under severe pressure here. Sam definitely does not want to capture this pawn, which would weaken his king's position.
And allow out possibility just of rook coming to e7 and disconnecting the queen and the rook and attacking f7.
Right.
It looks pretty ugly.
Well, and exactly, that's the threat that White has in the position, is this move rook e7, and there's no connection between Black's pieces, queen and rook. I think Sam played king f8. Yes, he did, to stop that powerful threat. And now, nice ideas of rook over, something like takes, and rook up and rook over, playing against that pawn on f7. Josh thinking, I thought I saw him reaching a moment there just to be sure, after takes, and putting this position on the board with a very obvious threat of rook f4 and rook takes f7 check, or bishop takes g6 check types of ideas. Last but not least, don't forget there's a pawn on b5 hanging, so in case of sometimes mass trades, there might just simply be a bishop takes b5 in a winning endgame as well for White.
How about if queen d6 here?
Queen d6.
Just trying to bail out tactically. Of course, I'm going to lose a pawn in the end of the variation. But,
If I take and take, but
but
probably
I
think I want to keep queens. Where can I move my queen? Way over here on a7.
the thing is, I'm ready to play knight c5 again.
Right.
But you
okay.
still have this rook f4 move.
Right.
And
but-
now how does it look if I go for this sacrifice line with queen takes f4 and knight takes d3?
Ooh, giving up the queen. Probably you didn't need to have to jump into that. This still looks pretty good for White. But a moment ago, no reason to panic yet. You could have played rook d7, just defending f7, and in case of a check on the back rank, king g7 and Black's king is okay. So I didn't play it very well with my rook up and over. I'll have to come up with something a little bit better, because
You
queen...
don't call it a rover. It doesn't end up working, I suppose.
Yeah, a rover. So...
Well, it's nice that if we do take the pawn immediately, that prevents us from playing. So after takes in b5,
Right.
or takes in, maybe we could take. We might want to take g6 first, just so you don't have queen takes f5.
Okay, we'll
I guess you
interpose.
never-
We'll interpose those moves.
Yeah.
It's okay. So we take. We are allowing the d pawn to run for a moment, but let's just calculate the line. It doesn't seem to me that with this bishop on a4 helping protect the d1 square that the pawn's going that far.
Meanwhile, if you had tried the queen d6 check, the queen d6 there, my point is that I have the move rook to e8 check, which I did not have before.
Oh, that's always a very nice tactic. Check. The rook is tied, anchored to the protection of the queen. So if you take my rook, I'll take your queen. If you move your king, I'll take your rook. So rook e8 would be a winner.
And we've got some news. So looking hot for Josh Friedel. And meanwhile, we have some news from Molnar Lenderman. Maurice, what's going on?
Well, Jen, I'm just so fascinated by the position. I'm really in shock at how easily White's position would have collapsed in the game between Molnar and Lenderman if Lenderman had found that move. Look at some of these variations. They are nasty. I mean, incredible lines. The move bishop to g4, simply winning, kerplunk, kersplat, all the Batman words. That's what would have happened here, because the move f3, e4, double exclamation mark all the way down. I think even if Lenderman saw this move, the variations are not completely obvious to calculate. It's not even that the move bishop f4 would have been so hard, guys, because the diagonal is going to open to the king, and the queen could always sidestep that move. But it's the other lines that are so complicated. Let me just start with the move you suggested, bishop to f4. This variation could have been met by a few moves, but bishop to c5 looks like the best one. Now the king has to be very careful because this rook is eyeballing that queen. Remember that rook move on e8? Avoiding the open file? That just shows grandmaster level. Great move. He may not have seen the tactics, but he understood a rook on the same line as a queen. Anything could happen. And here it would. Where could the king go? It has to hide from any discovered checks. So king h1 looks like the safest bet. But now just simple, e takes f3. You might say, well, why is this any good? Well, for starters, if you take the rook, then simply knight takes. And after bishop takes queen, looks like you're up, but suddenly f2, bishop's attacking rook, pawns attacking knight, pawns threatening to become a queen. Look out. You have no way to deal with all these threats. So this move, this position is dead lost. Another possibility here, after e takes f3, bishop takes c7 right away instead of the kamikaze move. Let's just take. But that doesn't help. He just plays rook takes queen, and you just have to compare the position. What's his pawn doing on f3? I mean, the position's busted. f2 is coming for starters, and if this knight were to move away, let's say to the d3 square, then simply bishop to d4, Lenderman would understand he's completely winning here. There's a pawn sitting here in White's throat. This bishop is going to come to h3. There's mate threats, dominant everywhere. But these are not even the funky lines. The lines that he had to consider after f3 and e4 come with the move f takes g4. Now a check. And the most natural move is knight g2. And this line is the line he would have to have analyzed and said, what exactly am I threatening here? Am I in fact winning completely? The threat seems to be check and check, but the bishop can block. So this might have been something he said, I'm not sure that, a knight on g2, a knight in front of a king, we know, protects a king really well. You can dance around the checks of a queen, but not if another knight on the other side is helping out. And here this check is going to come. So let's just analyze a few variations. If you start by ignoring what black is doing, then watch this. Check, the king moves, then queen h1 check, then the bishop goes back to g1. This is the position we were looking at. But now comes the move bishop to c5. And the added piece in the game simply wins. There's nothing to do about this attack on the bishop. You can't block with your knight because the simple capture and your bishop is pinned. So that would be losing. Let's look at another line. Here, rook d5 instead. Right before here, to deal with the upcoming threat of bishop to c5, you play this move. And now look at this sweet line. Queen check. The attack still rolls on. Queen h1 check. And after this move, bishop back to g1. Now knight h2 check. King has to stay on this bishop. It has to go here. And now the move knight f3 wins for starters. But I like another move, the move e3 check. Look at this one. If you take with the king, your bishop is hanging. If you take with the queen, knight g4 is sweet. Nice little fork. And after e3 check, if you take with the knight, you have to scratch your head at this bizarre checkmate. plenty of attacking lines. He would have had to really study the position deeply to realize that he was completely winning. Bishop G4 followed by E4 was totally winning in the game. No chances at all for his opponent, and it just slipped by the knight. I'm sure he's completely unaware of what happened. Guys?
Let's take a look at the game as it is. Thanks, Maurice, because we've got a lot of excitement here as Molnar has only 5 minutes in the clock, and it seems the position's actually kind of blowing up.
Wow.
We got the position on the board,
Yeah,
actually.
Queen C4 has just been played, and
Bishop
with
E6 was played.
was Bishop E6 was played because Queen C4 set up a battery with this bishop on B3 to play Queen takes F7 check and start taking Black's pieces with check.
Right,
So
like knight takes E3 would allow queen takes F7, and then after king H7, you have queen takes rook.
and
if-
Bishop G. Yeah, oh, that's actually a pattern that everybody should know. This should be in your quiver of weapons. This particular pattern, it's a real pretty one. If you go Queen G8 check, all you do is allow the king to escape, but you first play bishop check, repositioning the bishop to cover the G6 square, and you should all know this checkmating pattern. It's an it comes out time and time again.
Very similar to one that you loved to show earlier, where you had to maneuver that bishop to G6 and do the queen H7, queen. Remember
Right,
bishop
right,
H7,
right.
bishop G6,
takes
yeah.
H7 check, bishop G6. So,
So those are- so instead,
Lenderman dealt with that with bishop E6.
And now after queen takes E4, he
Yes.
played knight takes E3, and now queen takes E3 appears on the board. Of course, he can't take with the F pawn because the G3 pawn hangs.
So
and
Queen
now
takes E3 has been
queen
played.
takes E3, but now bishop takes C5.
How sweet it
and
is!
those
What
bishops are just lovely, aren't they?
I mean, there is an ambush against the G3 pawn.
So he's gonna have to keep an eye on the G3 pawn, otherwise queen takes G3 check is in the position.
Exactly.
So he's got two choices, it seems. Queen F3.
This kind of like a natural move. Now, in this position, your first thought might be to trade bishops, but after bishop takes b3, a takes b3, well, it's an ending, and you might want to think
About bishop
maybe,
C8 to B7.
yeah, maybe better to
Relocation,
preserve
yeah.
the bishop and thank the lucky stars that there's a lot of weaknesses over here against White's king. So
And very tough for you to increase the pressure on that F7 point. We could try playing something like, if we try a cheapo like rook C1, trying to go for rook takes C5. Well, now position's actually pretty interesting because bishop takes F2 doesn't really necessarily lead to anything because after king takes F2, queen C1, again F7 is hanging with check.
exactly.
Guys, in that line, what about knight to D3
And knight to d3 is on
instead of rook C1? That looks...
looks safer attacking the bishop, probably provoking the bishop to come back just to keep it to Suji against the knight on d3.
And then rook C1 in that position, maybe.
Yeah, it's all just kind of temporary because I think it's the two bishops, the two Bs, that Black is playing for. I mean, White is doing his best to hold
Not here,
on.
though. Rook E1 in this position.
Rook E1 trading.
No,
okay,
no trade. I'm going to sack on F7.
Oh, very good. I just have to find a good square for my queen. Queen A7.
I'm sorry. We should show that line because we're
Okay,
talking as
sure.
though everybody's following us.
Okay, sure.
The line with
So,
bishop to D6.
Gotcha. Bishop to D6. Maurice had a very nice cheapo in the position. So after rook E1 attacking the queen, if the queen wanted to go to D7, Maurice's point was that, hey, check. And looky, I get the rook. There's no recapturing because of the pin. Nice tactic, definitely. Let me just see the current position, because that game really has heated up, and we do
We have
have
queen F3 on the board.
and we do have queen F3 on the board, the line we're looking at. Maybe Mac is happy to get the slightly worse position with the 2B, playing against the 2Bs, because at least his king is not getting checkmated in that awful way that Maurice was showing us. If White can just simply get his knight back into the game, back into the battle with knight D3, good chances still of equalizing. And are the times correct? 4 minutes to 18? What I'm seeing on...
Yes. Yep,
the
we got 4
monitors.
minutes to 18. That's exactly right. Yeah, and of course Lenderman now one move after queen to f3.
Right. Okay. So clearly, Alex has missed a golden opportunity there earlier. Still having some pull, but certainly not the win that he would have liked.
What a sweet way to win that would have been.
I'm pulling up our game on our top board. It seems that White has done both breaks. Akobian has made both breaks. On the queen side, he's played b4, and on the king side, he's played g4. Let's see how he
But you
managed
really
to do
wanted to get your king on
d4 before I did
before,
any of
yeah.
this stuff. Okay, let's see how it did go. I would have traded knights, by the way, and gotten a pure knight ending. He went b4 right away. I really thought that it made more sense to try to activate the king first. Var b4 right away, takes, knight b7, g4, takes, knight d6, knight d4, h6. Still a very pleasant advantage for Var. How is he going to win this one, though? This is going to be tough.
Well, I wonder if he was worried about king c3. Maybe there was just like a knight a4 check, trying to keep
Sure.
the king at bay. And here, similarly, king c3, knight b5 check, kind of keeping us from being able to blockade that square.
Okay, well, first of all, after king c3,
No, I'm not. I was talking about if
sorry.
you hadn't played knight to d4.
a moment ago. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
if you
So-
try to just play king c3 here, it's nice that the b5 check kind of keeps that king at bay.
Well, the problem what Var has done is he's locked up the queen side when I was trying to recapture on b4 with the king to keep it fluid and to be able to play a4, a5. So Gata has been gifted a number of defensive options. I don't think I would have allowed him. h7, h6. Now I think that what Var needs to do to activate his king is to go all the way over here to h4 so that he may be able to play g4, g5 one day. But I think Gata's chances of making a draw have increased a great deal over from where he was. So
The
an
key is getting the
accurate play.
king in, and it hasn't seemed like VAR has made any progress in that area.
That's
So
precisely
it's not
it.
about kind of making an extra pawn weakness or getting your pawns in slightly better squares. You really must get the king into play.
Well, exactly. And right now on d2, it's not active enough to push the game into a victory column. And let's see what he did play. It looked
Seems
like
he just
did
moved a knight, yeah.
He made a retreating move. So he has played king e2, by the way. The players are definitely speeding up. So king e2, Var's recognizing that if anything, his king's got to come over here to the king side.
And now king f6 was played by Gata, and now that's where what we saw on the webcam, Varuzhin playing
I
knight
see.
on d to f3 after king f6, and now Gata playing g5, which perhaps
G5.
VAR was worried would be even stronger if his knight hadn't retreated back to f3 here. And this
Well,
trade of
again,
pawns.
Did he trade already? No. I
No.
don't think so.
No.
So-
Now it's VAR and move, but he actually has less than 3 minutes. So even though there's only 6 moves to make and we're close to time control, he's still going to have some pressure with that clock ticking away. Meanwhile, in Ramirez Robson, a game that seemed exciting early, Maurice has an update for us.
Yes, Jen, you remember when Grandmaster Feingold was here, he told Ray Robson yesterday, play fast and don't get into time pressure. Well, it's not so easy to cure the disease of poor time management because now we're looking at this position and Robson, after having a huge, solid advantage, let's call it, on the clock, he's now down to 3 minutes and he's got to make 13 moves, even with the increment, and he has frittered away his advantage in the game. So that time management disease, so many players we've seen over the years have it. The most infamous one being Alexander Ivanov, who played in these championships for many years before getting a bit older now. But man, playing him was always a circus almost, watching how much time pressure he would get into. And then if you ever fell into the belief that you could blitz him in time pressure, boy, he would show you something different. He'd play so quickly in time pressure, and not just quickly, but strong moves as well. But Ray does not want this to be a habit that chases him throughout his career. He's going to have to solve it because he went from having a good position here to no real advantage anymore. Just a smidgen of an advantage that he's trying to keep and also not blunder somehow and mess up his game. Shifting to another game, there is some conservative play that's happening on other boards as well that is actually at the leaderboard. And Josh Friedel has now managed to get himself into a worse position. Before he was doing so well, we were really enjoying this position for him, licking our chops, thinking about all the possibilities. Queen H6 was actually the most direct and powerful move, but instead he played the move H4, also not a bad move. Knight to B3, Queen F4, a little conservative, Queen to F6, and then he started losing the thread a little bit. He played the move Queen to C7, and here's where everything got interesting. After the move King F8, he could have snapped this pawn, but again, we realized this D pawn really produces complications, but instead, and he could also just play solidly, but instead he chose to trade here, and then here was the critical moment. Safety first, not allowing a knight to go to D2. He played the move Rook to D1, and this changed the entire complexion of the game. He had a line here. I'm not going to say he should have seen it, but a very consistent move would have been the move H5. The point being that after a knight to D2, threatening knight of 3 check, rook up, a check, king here, and now pawn takes pawn in this position could be met by queen to C5, picking back up his pawn. He might have analyzed this whole variation and thought after queen takes rook to H8, and he can't touch the knight because of suddenly rook down to H2 check, and he's losing his queen for the 2 pieces with a lost position. By the way, he might somehow dream of a fortress, but this is a pretty bad looking position. So he might have looked at all this and gotten to that moment and said, whoa, I'm not going into that line, and backed up. But he was still okay. He could have, after rook to H8, he could have just simply played a check to get out of the position and then just play another check if he wants to. Then just put the queen right here. The point is now his queen is in the way. He's threatening to take the knight. Queens come off. But even that position, he'd have to have seen all the way down and realize that this position was good for him. Not at all easy a task to do. Instead, he played the move rook to D1, safety first. And Sam pounced with rook to D5, covering all his weaknesses now. And suddenly this knight is looking a lot better than it did before. Queen to B7, queen to E5, centralizing his pieces. And who do you like here? You've got to like black. It looks like white's the one on the defensive, not any longer in control of the E file, no real attack to speak of. And now he played the move queen to A7 and Sam's time pressure, a little bit, not that much time pressure, 4 moves to make in 9-10 minutes. And black just looks fine here. Black is okay. So it looks as though all the players at the top are feeling the pressure in this penultimate round of the championships and not playing super aggressive, Yaz. Looks like they're playing it real close to the vest. Guys?
Lots of slippage in from advantageous positions, to be sure. Friedel not the only one, Jacoby in another, and it looks like Lenderman as well. So
That's
all
right.
of our leaders faltering a little as they're getting closer and closer to their claim on the national title.
Now, instinctively, if we go to that Molnar Lenderman game, you wanted to keep 2 bishops on the board.
I did.
Right? The 2 Shavuos.
We called them rabbis in the Pacific Northwest, the 2
I'll
rabbis.
take it. All right, so king takes G. I'm sorry. When you were talking about playing bishop C8 and rerouting the bishop to B7, enjoying to keep the 2 bishops. Instead, Lenderman perhaps assessed that that wasn't going to be quick enough, and he traded on B3 immediately.
Okay, bishop takes B3. White wanted to keep control over the E2 square, didn't want to allow queen takes rook E2, and so recaptured with a pawn.
And now he played the move bishop to F8, perhaps anticipating that black could play rook C1 at the right moment and embarrass. Although at the moment it was, of course, held down by the bishop takes F2 tactic.
Right.
After knight D3, it would have been possible.
Right.
So bishop F8, and now white played king to G2.
So
just to improve the position of the king. And now black has played a5. And where were all those tactics we used to have?
yeah, it's not there anymore, are there? Well, there's only one problem for white in the position, obviously, is the knight on e1. All white really needs to do is find a good square. c4 is obviously the most ideal square for the knight because it'd be protected by the pawn. Hit the pawn on a5.
Well,
So-
white did play queen d3, and that does open the f3 square for the knight to relocate via d2 or e5 perhaps in some
And
positions.
I no longer see Alex as winning this position or even being significantly better. The only reason that Alex might be better is if he could route his bishop to the h8 a1 diagonal and lock in on this pawn on b2. His idea of bishop f8 may have been to do precisely that with the move g7 g6, attempting to fianchetto the bishop and target the pawn on b2. But otherwise, this looks pretty balanced to me. And I don't like, obviously, these pawns on the queen's side being on dark squares.
Right. So you basically think the potential of the knight landing on c4 and the double pawns really pretty much balance each other out.
Exactly,
So,
exactly. So I see
yeah.
this game as pretty much going to a draw. If that
Although
were
we do
to,
have to be careful to say that at the championship. I totally agree that it's looking really balanced. And you thought that Varuzhina Kobian faltered a little bit as well, not making the most of his advantage. So what
not
happens?
just a little bit, I think a lot of it. I
and
think that
Lenderman, oh, and now we're looking at the position now. And
of
not
Gata,
only he's-
and I think it's just closing into a draw now.
with actually cutting off his ability to bring his king into the game, this move g5, right?
Exactly.
You wanted to try to get in via h4. That's no longer possible.
Right.
And no longer possible to get in via d4 either because knight b5 check's always going to be in the position.
Just to show our so we just have to make a move here for black, first of all. I guess we could start maybe with just the move knight b5 and there's no king c3. And if we just go back and forth, king c3, by the way, king d4 is not a threat. That would work into checkmate in one.
That'd be great. Let's do that.
Yeah, Gata wins, right? Ah.
No, can you at least put that variation on the board?
Sure, we sure will. So we're
Oh,
gonna.
wait, but we need to find a move for white here that
well,
allows it.
yeah, we need to find a move for black that allows
I mean,
it. Yeah,
well, just play bishop d7 or bishop
Okay.
a4, bishop a4.
bishop a4. Thank you. So we just found a square so that we can show that. Oopsie daisy,
But
checkmate
you
in the
finally
middle
got
of the
your
board.
king into the game, yes? Hasn't that been what you've been trying to do?
Yes, I was trying to do that, but not at the cost of a checkmate.
So you're believing, who do you think is more likely to win, Varuzhin or Lenderman?
Well, I see this game as really now drawn. Like, I don't think there's really too much to play for either side. And in the Lenderman game,
So you would say Lenderman then?
yeah,
just because
if I
weird
had to
things might
choose,
happen.
weird things might happen. But you know, sometimes when you're playing with the knight, weird things can happen. The knight might end up on some spectacular square, like say, you played g6, h5. You provoked your opponent to play g5. The knight might end up spectacularly well on the f5 square. So I'm going to say a draw in both games, but Lenderman better be careful that he doesn't overpress. And by the way, one other thing I should note, there is the possibility of Gata Kamsky playing the move d5, d4, and that might, no, I excuse myself. It does give up the c4 square. No, this game is heading for a draw for sure. And I think we're going to see two players tied going into the last round. Hold
well,
on,
let's,
Josh
as we wait for the
Friedel.
results, let's take a quick break and we'll be back for more from the 2014 U.S. Chess Championships, which looks like it's going to be setting us up for quite an interesting final round.
Huge. Tourette's.
Hello and welcome back to the 2014 U.S. Chess Championships here in St. Louis. How many of you found the answer to that puzzle? We've got Maurice for all the details.
Well, we know, Jen, that some of these puzzles are pretty dominating positions on the part of Bobby Fischer, and he had different ways to win. The cleanest, the crispy, creamiest way, actually, to win this position was bishop takes on c5, removing this knight as a defender so that he could do the follow-up move after rook takes on c5 or anything takes on d5 for that matter. The sacrifice, this is the move you really needed to see. Rook takes on e6 with check, and now the rook is skewering the king and queen, so you have to take with something, but no matter what you capture back with, pawn or king, then queen to f6 would be checkmate, and so his opponent after bishop c5 just was simply busted. Typical dominating performance from Bobby Fischer. Guys?
Well, meanwhile, we do have our first official result of the round. The game Varuzhina-Kobian-Gatakemsky was a draw, and of course that has massive implications for the U.S. Chess Championship. Varuzhina-Kobian is now going into the final round at half point ahead of Gatakemsky, and he'll be playing Alexander Lenderman, who, if he draws today, will also be in the lead by half a point. So
Right.
if that game is decisive, we'll have a U.S. champion.
Exactly. But if we don't, then we'll have a playoff.
Indeed.
And potential for a three-person playoff, depending upon how Josh fares with Sam Shanklin as well.
Right, so if the game is a draw, we'll definitely have at least a two-way playoff, and maybe we'll get Gata into the mix. But
Exactly.
hey, things don't look so great for Josh. In fact, they've gotten a little bit worse, a lot worse.
Okay, I'll
In his
bring
game
up
against
the
Sam, first you mentioned you like Josh. We like Josh's position like 10 moves ago tremendously.
Right.
And then you thought he was losing the thread and maybe worse, but now it looks like Sam Shanklin has managed to snap up a pawn right before time control.
Queen takes. We'll see. Basically, what happened is the Josh, I think, underestimated his chances. He was trying to make a blockade against the d-pawn. He saw an opportunity. I guess he felt he had this opportunity to capture on b5, but the move d3 was actually simply excellent for black. And after h5, queen takes b2. Discovered attack against the, not a discovered attack, a direct attack against the bishop. The bishop can't drop back, rook d4. There's an issue against queen and bishop. So
You see here on the webcam that Sam's looking a little nervous. That is, by the way, because he hasn't yet made his 40th move. He does have over 2 minutes, but the clock is still ticking away for him. After he makes this move, we expect him to be more relaxed.
Well, just let's see what he can do here. First of all, a very direct, simple move might be a move like queen e2 or, pardon me, mouse slip, or even queen c2, attacking the rook. And look at this, the rook on d5 is perfectly positioned to snap up this pawn over here on h5 as well. So Sam, the spoiler, Shanklin, is about, I think, to spoil yet another player's event, this time Josh Friedel.
I might add, guys, by the way, that in that case, in the case of the draw that happened with Akobian and Kamsky, anyone sitting on 4.5 right now has been mathematically eliminated from the tournament because someone will get to 7. No matter what happens in the game between Lenderman and Molnar, because Varuzhina-Kobian is on 6.5 points, someone will get to 7. Even if Lenderman were to lose and he had 6 points to Akobian 6.5, one of those two players, just by virtue of the mathematics, a draw or a win by someone, will get at least 7 points. So all the 4.5s, they're out of the tournament now. Naroditsky, Robson, Onishchuk, and even Sam Shanklin with a win today, he will get to 5.5, but it will not matter. He will not be able to catch the leaders. All of those guys, their dreams of winning the U.S. Championship concluded this round.
Right. We have seen a move, by the way, Queen B3 by Sam Shanklin, neither the Queen C2 or the Queen E2, which just snaps a pawn over on H5, but rather I do believe Sam has played the move Queen B3, inviting Josh to make a queen trade, and Black Sam Shanklin has probably calculated some variation where one of these pawns is about to promote.
Well, sure, the pawn could go to D2, and then the knight could maneuver to C3.
Exactly.
Just
D2.
that very undesirable square for the rook
Exactly.
in front of the passed pawn.
Exactly. And also still this pawn on H5 is hanging. So Sam looking very good, having made the time control. He'll get his bonus time now. And Josh is probably going to have to sit there and suffer and say, why did I blow this? Wasn't I doing very well? Let me go to the other
If
co-lead.
you can find a way to suffer.
Yes, exactly.
That'll be the key question.
Let me go to our other game between our co-leader, Alex Lenderman, having black. Queens have come off. The B2 pawn has been eliminated, but so has the A5 pawn. I think it's going to be a draw, but if I had to choose a color, I think the knight in this position, because the pawn is on a dark square, it's just a draw. It's just a draw. I was having some fantasy that white might be able to do something to have better chances. How did this happen? We'll go back to this situation, and the following moves were all played. Instead of fianchettoing his bishop, by the way, Lenderman felt it was better just to bring his bishop back out into the game. Queen F5, bishop here. Rook D5, very nice, going after the A5 pawn. Queen C2, takes, and this is how they've achieved the position on the board. So a very balanced game now. Lenderman having missed a forced win, a beautiful forced win that Maurice pointed out, and just setting us up for, once again, the final round tomorrow.
Well, the interesting thing is that we kind of expected Friedel to draw or win this game earlier in the game, but now, and so he'd have a fighting chance against Gata. Now, if he loses this game against Gata, he'll basically be playing the role of spoiler. He'll no longer actually have a chance to win the championship.
Exactly.
Because he'll only have 5.5 points. And Gata, meanwhile, would be having to play all out for the win, and Josh just defending for rating points, prestige, final placement. Of course, the prize money is differentiated in every spot, but a lot different than the excitement we might expect if he also had to play for the win
Exactly.
for first place. So
Exactly.
that being said, I think Lenderman and Akobian in their game, they are both going to be very aware of the fact that Kamsky can catch up.
Exactly.
And because of that, they are not, definitely no short draw, 100%. First of all, it's against the rules. But
Yeah.
I don't even think we'll see a position where it's timid. I think both players will be playing very actively, trying to avoid the potential of a three-way playoff, which actually would be pretty likely if they draw.
Well, again, Gata's got to be very happy to be in the situation he has been in. Our defending champion has not been in his best form, and today he was fortunate to get the draw, but he is here in our studio to share his ups and downs of this round.
That's right. Gata Kamsky, he's with Maurice Ashley, and his chances for winning the U.S. Championship still very real, playing the white pieces against Josh Friedel in the last round.
Thanks, Jen. I am with Grandmaster and four-time champion, U.S. champion, Gata Kamsky. Gata, welcome to the show. This game, it looks like you had no chances from the beginning to win. You were always a little bit worse. Were you happy with, well, I guess I'm not even going to ask that question. I'm sure you weren't happy with the way the opening went. What went wrong?
Well, to be really honest, I completely messed up my move order on the second move, and I was preparing some other line. And then I remembered this line, which was shown to me by my second Volokitin like many years ago. And then Vrozhan played this new idea of taking on c5. and knight e2, with the idea of c4 opening up the squares, and I realized my position was really unpleasant. So I don't know, then I just started to think and came up some defensive moves, but overall white was always better. I think that he managed, he shouldn't have allowed me to play a5, because after a5, white can no longer make progress on the queen side.
Did you think it was the correct direction for him to go and trade off all the pieces to get to this end game, or should he have played more actively
We just
before?
looked a little bit in the postmortem, and we realized that white should have kept his queens on, because my king is way more open. I'm sorry. Anyway.
Let's just go back a little bit
Yeah.
to here.
Yeah, here. So instead of knight e5, we're looking at b4, just to make sure white gets the possibility to play a5 and fix the black pawn on a6 later. And if b4, then rook takes on c1.
Let's press new variation.
Okay. Rook takes c1, queen c8, and now it's simply queen b2, because that diagonal is really powerful, and black's bishop is reduced to pure defense, which is always not a good idea. So in this position, it will be really unpleasant for me to defend this. And after queens came off, it became much easier. So that was a draw.
So you're in a situation where you're half a point behind Varuzhin. It looks as though Lenderman's going to draw. You're not really in control of your own destiny so much. How do you go into tomorrow's game?
Same thing I do every day. Just go and play a game. Because I think I said maybe 3 or 4 rounds ago that I don't think my chances are really good this year. So I'm taking it easy this time.
That's interesting. I mean, objectively, you're the strongest player in the competition, and you've won this tournament 4 times. You know how to win this tournament, and yet you evaluated when you said that. It kind of surprised all of us here that you would say something that dramatic as your chances are not very good. Please explain to us why you said that.
Well, everybody's been preparing for this event. I mean, this is premier national event, and I think people prepared for at least 2-3 weeks in advance for this. And these days, the strength of the players is not that huge, like in the old days between Kasparov and the rest of the guys. And now everybody's playing strong computer moves and seeing all the ideas. So, these guys have been waiting for their chance. So,
Do you think it's getting harder and harder to win these tournaments?
sure, of course.
What about a statement earlier was by Grandmaster Ben Feingold? He sort of controversially said that he thinks that is the younger generation's turn. He thinks that now is the time that they're taking over. Do you think it's that definitive right now?
Well, okay. But they're getting there. That's all I can say.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, and wish you luck in your last game.
Thank you.
Grandmaster Gadakovsky, playing it close to the vest, but still within striking distance of the leaders. If they don't win tomorrow, particularly if Lenderman draws today, then he is still in the mix here at the U.S. Championships. Guys?
I don't believe him for a second. Tomorrow he's not going to take it easy. He's going to play for the win.
Well, he's
We
going to
can
play
get into
hard.
that.
He will play hard.
And I think it'll be a little different. He knows the math. He
Oh.
wins. There's a decent chance that Lenderman and Akobian will make a draw. I mean, I don't know, 30%,
Sure.
40%. That puts him in the 3-way tiebreak and a massive favorite in rapid.
Right.
He would be a
and-
massive favorite between the 3 of them in rapid chess, don't you think?
Yes, I do. But
I mean, depending on whichever
but-
one he got to play. Or
But doesn't it work like this in case of a 3-way tie? The 2 players with the worst tie breaks have to play against each other first. One guy is in the finals already. We don't know
Exactly.
who the best tie breaks
Right,
is.
so in that case, he wouldn't be a massive favorite if he didn't have the best tie breaks. Yeah,
Exactly.
I'm saying in any individual rapid match between those 3 players.
Sure, if they
He
were
will be,
all in a threesome playing against one another, right?
Right, exactly. So, in fact, it's not actually mathematically possible for him to play against only one of them, right? It's either
Yes.
going to be a 3-way playoff or he's just out of the party.
That's right.
So, that would be the best he can hope for, and he will be playing for it.
And we do have our
Tournament leader still.
leader still, Varuzhin Akobian, up with Maurice next, telling us about his journey in today's game.
And what he thought of his chances. You rated them very highly,
Very highly.
as did Gary.
Thanks, guys. I am with Grandmaster Varuzhin Akobian, who is still atop the leaderboard at this tournament. But Var, you must feel that you let some kind of chance to slip away today.
Yeah, I got a great position in the opening, and it looks like Gata wasn't familiar with this theory here and got a big advantage on the clock, and everything seemed going the right way. I, had this little exchange sacrifice, got the exchange back, eliminated the bishops, and everything was right. And I think Gata already mentioned the crucial moment was here when he played b6. After I play here b4, I think I have very good winning chances here. I just completely forgot this idea to push this pawn, stop a5, and allow my queen to go to b2. I should keep the queens on the board because the queen and two knights together is very strong here, and it will be very unpleasant here after after b4. I think it's maybe computer will show slightly better, but I think objectively it's actually very unpleasant for black to play.
So, how did you come into this game, your frame of mind? Yesterday, you had a difficult game, losing the game after having a great championships, 8 in a row. And then you lost the game, and now you have to play against Gata Kamsky, 4-time defending champion. What was your mindset coming in today?
Yeah, I just had to forget about that game. It was just a bad game. I had a really bad day yesterday. I just forgot my preparation and just made bad moves. It just wasn't my day yesterday. So it happens to even the best players in the world. Sometimes they have an off day, and I had a really bad day yesterday. But today I played well. I got a good position, and I just wish I would have find this idea before. I kind of went quickly with knight e5. It just looks so natural to put the knight on that weak square, but I should play a little bit more delicately b4 and then put the queen on b2. I had very good winning chances, I think.
So, sort of a nuanced miss here. Next round, you're going to play against Lenderman, who looks like he's going to draw his game. Seems very close to a draw. And by the way, he missed the win in his game as well, just a clean win. So it looks like some missed opportunities from the two of you at the top. And now you have to play against each other, you with the black pieces. What's your mindset going into that game?
Yeah, I just, it's, at this point, I think for the guys who are leading, it's just a lot of pressure. So I have to make sure that you don't get the pressure doesn't get to you. You just have to, try to play well. And I haven't been in so many of these situations where the last game means everything. I had once in 2003, similar situation, but just have to rest, prepare, and try to play my best tomorrow.
You remind me of 2003, the championship that you and Shabalov played, and he won that game. What lessons will you take from that game in order to bolster your chances in this game?
Yeah, at that time I was 19 years old and my first US championship, and I was just a game away from winning it from my first try, and had a very good position, 2 extra pawns, and just I think experience was the factor in that game, because I could just convert very promising position and will be a champion at 19. But I think I'm more experienced. It's 10, 11 years past, and I'm a lot more experienced, and I have a great second here, so I hope to do well tomorrow.
Well, we wish you the best in the final game of the tournament.
Thanks.
Grandmaster Varusian Jacobian, Yaz, you have a question?
Yeah, I can't let VAR escape without asking one question. Late in the, I agree that b4, trying to nail down the pawn on a6 would have been a good decision, but much later in the game, after there was an opportunity to trade knights and get a pure knight versus bishop ending, knight takes d7, let us say, bishop takes d7, knight f3, let us say. I actually evaluated VAR's chances of winning this position highly, and yet it seems to me that VAR himself didn't think that he really had much. Could you explain to me why you feel that this position is not so greatly favorable as I think it is?
Yeah, it's a good question, because that's why I spent a lot of time here after thinking about my move here. I just was calculating to reach this position, but the problem here is he just doesn't have any weaknesses that I can try to exploit here. So he just simply plays king d6 and
King e1.
King, yeah, let's say we bring the king, bishop e8,
King e d2.
yeah, king c5,
King c3,
and h6, and so I have to play b4, yes?
Do you have to play b4, or could you knight d4? Okay, b4 check, sure, I'll fall for it.
Exchange, and the
Change,
king goes on d6, king d4.
And yeah, this was what...
Yeah, and then bishop a4.
Yeah, this was the position that Jennifer and I were looking at, and it just felt to us that even though you don't get to play king c5 right away, this is a kind of a position where you have no risk. You don't risk anything. And you have moves like knight e5 and g4 and e4, even e4 possibilities with your knight on e5. And it just felt like you could make your opponent suffer for quite some time.
Yeah, I agree that probably I should have played this way. I think it's still objectively a draw, but this was better. In fact, when I played knight df3, I was actually trying to get this position, but I thought he would exchange and I get my knight on e5, but actually missed the fact that he plays knight c5. And black, it's better for him to keep the knights on the board here, so this is the detail that I missed. And then actually it's much more difficult. As soon as he brings the knight on d6, actually it's probably a draw already. I can't do anything. There's no way to no entry point there. So I should have exchanged the knights. It's absolutely correct, and try to play that position. But I think against Kamsky, I don't think I can win this kind of position, because it's there are no good ways to break through here, because bishop is not that bad. I mean, optically this looks great for white, but I think bishop is pretty strong. He just goes back on e8, and I think it should be a draw here.
Grandmaster Varuzhin Akobian with all to play for tomorrow in the championships. A win, and he's the U.S. champion. Guys?
Well, I can't wait for tomorrow. I mean, we're going to have some great matches, and I'm happy that nobody really ran away with the tournament. At various times we had our leaders, but they got caught and pulled back, and the truth of the matter is that the players who have played best in this U.S. championship, Alex Lenderman and Var Akobian, it's really wonderful that they're going to decide it in their game tomorrow.
Right. Unless there's a playoff, and let's take a look at our playoff rules. Well, if the players, well, there's a two-way tie, which actually is impossible, right? So if we're actually going to a three-way tie or no tie, yeah?
Right.
If there's a three-way tie, the two players with the lowest tie breaks will contest an Armageddon game. So what happens is those two players contest an Armageddon game to see who gets into the finals.
In case of a three-way tie. But in case Gata doesn't win, he doesn't come up into a tie in case of a draw. If Lenderman and
you're right.
Yeah, if
sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
Of course.
If Lenderman and Akobian make a two-way
tie.
tie, then bang, we're in this situation, which is our number one thing. Two
and of
games
course,
of rapid
assume
chess.
that Gata will win. Friedel has been playing pretty well.
Excellently.
Withstanding.
Exactly. So a two-way tie, they would first play two rapid games, then it's that auction.
Well, actually, if the two players, yes, exactly. They'll just play a two-game rapid match, and then there's an auction with a 45-minute base time.
Right.
If it's a three-way tie, the two players with the lowest tie breaks will contest an auction game to start, an Armageddon game.
Mm-hmm.
And the winner will then face the player with the highest tie breaks in a two-game rapid match, again followed by an auction game. So could be up to 5 hours of chess here tomorrow, basically the same as a regular 11th round.
And in the ladies, if the two ladies who are leading both win, they'll be in the same types of playoffs
and the games will be going on
tiebreaks.
simultaneously. We'll see both playoffs happening at the same time. So
how exciting! This is great.
I think
great
we're
stuff.
At least get one playoff.
Wow, this would be great.
Maybe like a 40% chance we'll get it in the championship and 50% in the ladies.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I guess that means
Extra work for us.
That's what it
Extra
means.
work for Maurice.
No rest for the weary. That's what that means.
All
He's
right.
stuck working again. By the way, guys, we should jump to another game. The game between Shanklin with him on the black pieces and Friedel is over. It's busted. I don't mean that the resigning has happened yet, but it might as well, because Shanklin has somehow managed to turn this position around where he was worse to one where he is simply winning. The move Queen F4 has been played. First, I will go back just momentarily. When he made time control, right around here we saw Friedel just moving around with his pieces, even though he had time on his clock, and he played very quickly here. He played this check, king up, queen g4. In the meantime, progress, knight c5, a beautiful move, attacking the bishop. But after bishop takes b5, d3, a nice understanding that the d pawn meant more than his b pawn. And now the move h5, this move cost him the game. Right here, he should have defended with queen to b4, stay tight, but he didn't realize with the danger he was in. Maybe again, time pressure, but it didn't seem so bad. He allowed this pawn to drop from the board, and suddenly the queen turned into a beast, attacking on different fronts. This move attacking the bishop, attacking the pawn, rook attacking pawn. Big trouble for him. Queen to b4. Now the sterling move, queen to b3, attacking this rook. Key move. White's pieces are separated and no longer clustered or harmonized in any way. This rook under attack, separated from the rest of its army. He moved the rook over, but that just allowed the pawn to go to d2, and the pawn now threatens to become a queen. Straight on the board, big threat. Nothing can be done now. He played the move queen to f4, and he has many wins, starting, by the way, with just simply queen takes bishop. That wins very easily. Fritz is playing, Houdini, that is playing the move g5 as an option here to just have a refinement. Is doing some crazy calculations, but I think that queen takes on b5 will be done. And Sam Shanklin, talk about the upset artist. He will have defeated so far Akobian, who was cruising to victory, Lenderman when he was cruising to victory, and Friedel when he had a chance in the championships. A win by him, by Friedel, would have given him a tie for first with Akobian, and very likely right now, as we see Lenderman there, would have given us a tie with Lenderman as well after this game, which should theoretically end in a draw, although I'm a little bit confused as to what the position is on that board right now.
Knight c6. I mean, everything's
Yes,
off the
indeed.
board.
So everything
Yeah.
will go off the board after this check, and the game will end in a draw after the move knight c6, protecting his rook, and that will be a draw. So Lenderman will be kicking himself when he finds out that he could have been sitting on 7 points, leading the championship with white tomorrow against Akobian, having his destiny in his hands. But now as it stands, he will be tied for first going into the last round, again with all to play for, guys.
That's right. The only difference is in that case, if he had actually won this game, he would have been in a situation where a win
draw.
or a draw would be given
Enough.
the championship.
Would have clinched, yeah.
Whereas now it's he has to win. Otherwise, a draw will give him just a playoff.
Exactly.
So could
But
be
he
worse,
has-
basically. I feel
And
like
he
it
has
could
white.
be worse.
And after all, the only game that Akobian lost in the tournament was when he was black. And it will be all about preparation. And we've seen it time and again in this event that Lenderman's preparation has simply been superb. So white and the championship must win, and Lenderman's the champion.
And it's interesting that they're still playing this on, Yasser. I think that perhaps Lenderman is a little bit frustrated by the fact that he didn't milk more out of this and is just kind of like relaxing by getting these moves in. What do you think?
Yeah, well, okay. I personally don't mind it. Sometimes I actually mind when the players agree to a draw when it's less obvious draw, and amateur players would say, well, couldn't he have done this or that?
Agreed. That's
So
right.
well, why not just play rook takes rook, knight takes rook, and then say, okay, 3 versus 3, knight versus bishop, same side of the board, we can make a draw. But yeah, sure, just play on a few more moves and let the spectators get their full money's worth, and it's a draw. That's it. It's a draw.
Yes, and we expect a handshake from those guys any minute now, really. Right. Meanwhile, how bad is Friedel Shanklin?
Pretty bad, pretty bad. Indeed, queen takes